The man who hunted me in the woods. When you go camping deep in the forest, you expect peace, quiet, maybe some wildlife. But what I experienced while camping near Mount Rainier in Washington turned into the most terrifying few days of my life. This wasn't an official campground. I was way out in the wilderness. No people, no roads, no signs of civilizations for miles. I didn't expect to see another human being the entire trip. The first couple nights were fine, quiet, peaceful, but on the third night, something happened that still gives me the chills when I think about it. I woke up in the middle of the night to a faint sound outside my tent. At first, I thought it was just a normal animal. But when I unzipped the tent and peeked out, there was a man sitting by the ashes of my fire. Just a regular-looking guy. No bag, no backpack, no gear, just sitting there, staring at the ground, a couple feet from my tent. When he saw me, his eyes went wide, like he had just seen a ghost. Then, without saying a word, he bolted into the woods. I sat there frozen for a while. My heart was racing, but eventually I convinced myself he was probably just some random hiker, maybe high or lost, who had stumbled across my campsite. I shook it off and went back to sleep. The next day I managed to put it out of my mind, but what happened after proved this wasn't an accident. 2 nights later, I had moved camp at least 10 to 15 miles away in a totally different direction. There's no way anyone could have just randomly wandered to the same spot. That night, I was sitting by my fire when I started hearing noises in the trees. At first, I thought it was an animal, but the longer I listened, the more certain I became that it was footsteps. I called out, "Hello?" A voice answered from the darkness.
"Do you know how to go to Bell's Canyon?"
I froze. I didn't even think that was a real place. I said no and asked who it was. The voice stayed just out of my vision. I raised my flashlight, trying to see. "Hey,
"Aim that away."
the voice yelled back. Something in his tone made me comply. I lowered the light. For the next 15 minutes, I sat there, terrified, as this stranger spoke from the darkness, asking random questions, rambling nonsense, circling just beyond the glow of my fire. But then I heard him closer, much closer. My instinct screamed at me. I raised the flashlight again and pointed it towards the sound. And there he was, the same exact man who had been outside my tent 2 nights before. My blood ran cold. The second the beam hit him, he took off running into the woods. I jumped up and started to chase him. But after 100 feet, I stopped. I didn't want to get lost in the pitch black forest. There was no denying it now. He had followed me. He tracked me 10 miles, over 2 days, and for what? The rest of the trip became a nightmare. I packed up first thing in the morning and began the long hike out of the forest. 3 days back to my car. I doubled back constantly, taking random detours, even hiding in the bushes to see if anyone was following me. The first night, the way back, I lay in my tent paralyzed with fear as footsteps circled outside, round and round, crunching in the dirt just feet away. By the time I mustered the courage to look, nothing was there. On the second night, I heard howling in the distance. At first, I thought it was an animal, but the longer it went on, the more certain I became it was a human imitating one. I never saw him again, but every second of that hike I felt hunted. When I finally reached my car, I almost cried with relief. To this day, I have no idea who that man was, why he followed me, or what he wanted. But I know one thing for sure. I was being stalked and might have not made it out of those woods if I had stayed any longer. Last night, I was at a classmate's house working on a group project we had due the next day. He lives out in the foothills, just outside of town, while I live in an apartment near the university. To get to his place, you have to drive along this narrow, winding 2-lane road for about 5 to 6 miles. No street lights, barely maintained, riddled with potholes and surrounded by woods. We started working around 6, but I ended up hanging out a little longer than planned. By the time I left, it was almost 11 at night. That's when the drive back turned into something I'll never forget. About 3 miles from the house, I rounded a tight corner, and that's when I saw a pickup truck with a camper shell parked diagonally across the road, completely blocking my path. The road was too narrow to get around, and on both sides, there were steep gullies. The only way out I could go was backwards, towards a pull-off I had passed a little ways back. At first I couldn't see inside the cab. When I switched on my high beams, I saw a man slumped forward in the driver's seat. His head was resting against the steering wheel, like he had just been knocked out in an accident. My gut immediately told me something was wrong. The way the truck just happened to block the entire road, it didn't look like an accident. I'd heard stories about people faking injuries or playing dead on the road as a setup to rob whoever stopped. And in that moment, I wasn't about to find out if those stories were true. I threw the car into reverse. My eyes darted between my rearview mirror and the truck as I slowly backed up, aiming for the pull-off. And then when I looked forward again, my blood turned to ice. The man who had been slumped over in the truck was now out of the vehicle and walking quickly towards my car. And he wasn't alone. 2 more men jumped out from the back of the camper shell, moving toward me. I panicked, I hit the gas, speeding backwards, until I reached the pull-off. My undercarriage scraped hard against the gravel, but I didn't care. I just needed to turn around. By the time I shifted into drive, one of them was already by my passenger side door. He yanked on the handle, pulling with everything he had. Thank God the doors were locked. For a split second, I caught a clear look at his face. It was scabbed, leathery, almost sickly, like he was strung out on something. I floored it. I didn't stop. I didn't even breathe until I was back at my classmate's house, constantly checking the rearview mirror to make sure they weren't chasing me. Luckily, they didn't follow. When I got back, I explained everything, and we called the cops. They searched the road, but there was no sign of the truck, no sign of the men. I filed an incident report, and they told me they'd be on the lookout for any suspicious vehicles or activity in the area. But even now, I can't shake it off. Every time I think about the way he yanked on my door, or the way the others emerged from the camper shell, my heart starts racing all over again. I don't even know what could have happened if I had stopped, but I know one thing: those men weren't there to help. So a few months ago, I was out hiking with my friend in the mountains of western Maryland. We were about 6 miles into an 8-mile loop we'd done plenty of times before, and decided to stop at the summit to take some pictures and have a snack. The area had picnic tables, benches, even a parking lot. As we sat there, I noticed a man wandering around the lot. He wasn't hiking, no backpack, no boots, just jeans and a button-down shirt, staring at the ground as he aimlessly walked around. It didn't sit right with me. Eventually, we packed up and started the last stretch of the loop, which led down towards the parking lot, where we parked our car. The trail narrowed, carved into the mountain, so we had to walk in single file. I was in front, chatting with my friend. When I turned to look at her, I froze. The man from the parking lot was right behind her, following, way too close. The gut-wrenching instinct hit me immediately. I slowed down, pretending to tie my shoe so he could pass us. My friend caught on and stepped aside too. She politely said, "Hello." He didn't respond. He just stared. That's when I noticed he was holding a stick. He walked past us, but instead of continuing, he slowed down. Then when he got just far enough ahead, he turned around and stared at us. Something was wrong, very wrong. We decided not to keep going, not if it meant following him, but turned around, back up towards the summit. A few minutes later, I looked back, my stomach dropped. He was following us again. We sped up, practically jogging uphill, until we made it back to the lot. We waited there, with more people around, hoping he'd either show himself or leave us alone. 20 minutes passed, no sign of him. Then a couple came up from the trail, going the opposite direction we had been. We asked if they'd seen anyone. They had, a young man sitting on a rock about halfway down. They described him perfectly. But then the husband said something that made my blood run cold. He wasn't just sitting there. He had a knife, and he was carving that stick. Needless to say, we called a ranger immediately. The couple even walked with us to our car to make sure we were safe. The ranger searched the trail, but found nothing. To this day, I wonder what would have happened if we hadn't trusted our instincts.
Thank you for watching and listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share these stories with someone who thinks they sleep too easily at night.